Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining me on this dive into the reconstruction. I'm going to carry on with where I left off. The idea that thought is essentially finite, and for this reason unable to capture the infinite, is based on a mistaken notion of the movement of thought in knowledge. It is the inadequacy of the logical understanding which finds a multiplicity of mutually repellent individualities with no prospect of their ultimate reduction to a unity that makes us skeptical about the conclusiveness of thought. So this is quite a lot, to get into. I think best to give a kind of a way into, if anybody has come across the writing of Ian McGilchrist, I think this is a good way in. His two books, The Master and the Emissary and The Matter with Things, talk about two hemispheres of the brain. There's the left and the right, and the left is the emissary of the master, which is the right brain. And the right brain, in a sense, sees the whole picture of all, and the left brain kind of sees details and technicalities within that whole. A good way to understand that is McGilchrist's explanation of the type of why a bird has two hemispheres. So the one aspect of the bird's brain is the left, and that deals with pecking for seeds. So when the bird is observing the ground beneath it, it will see that that's a little pebble and that's a seed. That's an even smaller little type of pebble, stone, and there's a seed, there's an ant, there's a worm, there's a stick. So it deals with these type of practicalities, whereas the right brain, the right hemisphere of the bird, kind of keeps its context in the whole and is surveying the hemisphere. That's why the eyes of the bird are kind of situated here. They can see the whole hemisphere, and and it needs to do this because at any particular time there may be a bird of prey kind of swooping down upon it to clutch it and carry it away. So in other animals, in the human being, we see a bigger picture. We kind of and the human being sees a much larger picture beyond even this space time because of the heart. So both these type of thinking are essentially of the brain, yet the brain in a sense has two modes of thinking. And when we highlight only the logical understanding, it is incapable of seeing the whole picture, as it were. So it only finds a multiplicity of mutually repellent individualities. It can't see the whole, with no prospect of their ultimate reduction to a unity that makes, and so when and in McGilchrist, he says that if the evolution of conscious kind of goes through modes, and there are periods when people see a bigger picture, and there's periods when people get really quite narrow, and they're only able to use that mode of consciousness. We can pull back a little bit, or we can push back a little bit at Ian McGilchrist's kind of brain centricity, and bring in the concept of the heart. It's just I think, in a sense of being an illustrative way of understanding these different concepts, bringing in a contemporary voice such as Ian McGilchrist is helpful. But we can think about kind of brain and heart. So the heart can comprehend the whole, whereas the brain in itself is only really moving within these concepts of logical thinking. I think if I read on, it'll get a little bit clearer. In fact, the logical understanding is incapable of seeing this multiplicity as a coherent universe. Its only method is generalization based on resemblances. But these generalizations are only fictitious unities, which do not affect the reality of concrete things. In its deep, I actually want to go into that and think about it more myself, but then I will and ah for too long and we'll get stuck. So let's just kind of let's kind of move on. In its deeper movement, thought. So here, previously, he's describing the generalizations of the logical brain only, or left brain thinking. In its deeper movement, however, so thought, so when as kind of thought moves into a more right brain or in a more heart-centric way, thought is capable of reaching an immanent infinite, in whose self-unfolding movement the various concepts, the various finite concepts, are merely moments. Beyond the paradigm of this space-time, within the higher aspects of Islamic cosmology, for instance. In its essential nature, then, thought is not static. It is dynamic and unfolds its internal infinitude in time, like the seed, which, from the very beginning, carries within itself the organic unity of the tree as a present fact. Thought is therefore the whole in its dynamic expression, appearing to the temporal vision as a series of definite specifications which cannot be understood except by a reciprocal reference. Another way to understanding these difficult sentences is to realize we're dealing with a different concept of cosmology, that the predominant paradigm of the present is that our consciousness is an epiphenomena, that almost the brain secretes thought, and thought and consciousness is actually something that's rare in the universe, that the universe is a dead substance, that planets are dead substances, heavy substances, kind of spinning without real purpose. And in kind of movements of increasing complexity, somehow out of the organic, the inorganic, out from the inorganic appears life, appears the organic, and then through a period of, a long period, somehow from the organic arises consciousness, and it's a rare thing, whereas the cosmology that Iqbal is describing, thought is central. Thought, consciousness, language, these are all kind of the same thing, are the basic foundational principles of the universe. Here I will go back and read that. Thought is therefore the whole in its dynamic self-expression, appearing to the temporal vision as a series of definite specifications which cannot be understood except by a reciprocal reference. Their meaning lies not in their self-identity, but in the larger whole of which they are specific aspects. The larger whole is, to use the Quranic metaphor, a kind of preserved tablet, a Lohi Mahfuz. So in a sense that the Lohi Mahfuz is a Quranic metaphor for the primality of, to use a more Christian term, which is is the Logos, or is thought, consciousness, language. The Lohi Mahfuz holds up the entire undetermined possibilities of knowledge as a present reality, revealing itself in serial time as a succession of finite concepts appearing to reach a unity which is already present in them. It goes back. Let's go back. Talking about thought, it is in its essential nature then, thought is not static, it is dynamic and unfolds in the internal infinitude, in the internal infinitude in time, like a seed, from which the very beginning carries within itself the organic unity of a tree as a perfect fact. So in a sense, the seed, here is a kind of metaphor for the Lohi Mahfuz, in which the seed has the potentiality of the tree. The Lohi Mahfuz has the potentiality of everything that happens within the succession of serial time. In fact, the presence of the total infinite in the movement of knowledge that makes finite thinking possible. I'll stop there. So Iqbal here is really revealing just what our traditional Islamic cosmology is. However, he's doing so in more modern parlance, yet he's getting to the heart of trying to explain that universe that was understood in the classical period and the pre-modern period. He's trying to explain that to the modern reader in the format of English. And we need to learn how to see the universe, nature, reality, everything, as essentially we need to see life, biological life, whether it's a tree, a blade of grass, and not exclusively biological life, even the stones, even inorganic stuff. as being essentially intelligent, an expression of an essential intelligence. And throughout the book, he goes on to outline this. And so there is no division of thought and biology. And there is no division in kind of mystical experiences and logical scientific thinking. And when we not only conceptually come to realize this, it becomes a lived, felt experience of a unity of thought and movement, a unity of thought and biology. Then we begin to understand what Iqbal is saying. And it's that experiencing of feeling whole, of feeling vitalized, of feeling vital that we get from our deep dive, or our dive, even if we're only paddling in a sense, we get from, entering into this ocean of thought that's contained in this rather short series of lectures by Iqbal. So hopefully I'll carry on tomorrow, inshallah.